Now, violence has marred Nigeria's Golden Jubilee anniversary. Police say at least 7 people have been killed in explosions in Abuja. The blasts went off about 1 hour after a militant group warned it had planted several bombs at Eagle Square, the venue for the celebrations marking Nigeria's 50th year of independence. The celebrations, including a military parade, went ahead without disruption.
Nigeria's anniversary celebrations have been going on all week and included President Goodluck Jonathan inspecting a naval fleet. The president says the Nigerian Navy requires adequate platforms and support to enable it to police the country's territorial waters. Mr. Jonathan also urges the Navy to protect the country's natural resources at all costs, adding that the Navy has been effective since inception and has been doing very well.
Now, one of Nigeria's most respected political figures is sharing his thoughts on the country's 50th anniversary. Nobel Prize winner Wole Soyinka was recently elected to lead the Democratic Fronts for a People's Federation. While he has no plans to run for president, he has some very strong opinions on the future of Nigeria. VOA's Clara Frenk has more.
Professor Wole Soyinka is known for fighting for democracy and human rights. The messages in his plays condemn oppressive Nigerian regimes. When he called for a ceasefire during Nigeria's civil war, he was jailed for almost 2 years. He was released in 1969. He won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1986, then went into exile in 1994. He returned home 4 years later, after the death of military ruler Sani Abacha. Now at age 76, Soyinka is still vocal on the country's politics.
There are many quote-unquote patriots, who really have no feeling whatsoever for Nigeria or for their nations, and are willing to sacrifice any number of people simply in order to maintain the size of what they consider their personal real estate. That is where the contradiction is. I believe, however, that, as I've said over and over again, that I believe that this nation space called Nigeria can be made to work. But it's still a project in the making. Let's not be sentimental about it.
Soyinka says unemployment at around 19% is one of Nigeria's major problems. Almost half of Nigeria's 15 to 25-year-olds are jobless.
First of all, we have a huge problem with unemployment. And when you have unemployment, the gap between the rich and the poor widens even further. For the simple reason that the rich always know how to look out for themselves and even know how to exploit a situation of impoverishment. And therefore, it's a dangerous social situation which has got to be addressed. More jobs have got to be created, and in a very dynamic way, really purposefully.
Nigeria is Africa's top oil producer and one of the continent's economic powerhouses. Preparations are underway for elections next year.
If Nigerians still go to this election, hammer and tongs, with that mentality of the most ruthless killer take all, not just winner take all, but killer take all, then of course this election is going to be a disaster. So it's possible, but it can only come about, a free and fair election this time round can only come about if Nigerians recover that sense of self-worth that made them act as one in a disciplined and truthful manner towards one another in the election of 1993.
Nigeria is Africa's second largest economy. Economists project economic growth of 7% this year as well as next. Experts say that rising oil prices and increased production are expected to drive Nigeria's economy higher. For producer Carolyn Turner, this is Clara Frenk, VOA News.
Nigerian officials say kidnappers have freed 15 school children taken from their school bus earlier this week. A police official says the children were unharmed. The 15 children, some as young as 3, were abducted when their school bus was hijacked on its way to Abayi International School. There was no confirmation on whether a ransom was paid.